Welcome to the St. Louis Syndicate. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We're here with your NFL Steam. A lot of movement, a lot of fun going on this week. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoyed the Black Friday telecast. I know Brandon and I had a blast doing it.
Oh yeah, there's more where that comes from.
I think it had to be entertaining just getting to us and seeing us drinking online and chatting it up with Bill and Eric. Man, those guys are awesome. And the
Oh yeah,
Sandman games coming up, man, they're going to be pretty cool. So I'm looking
without a
forward
doubt.
to all the games, and I'm actually might have to get some Sandman bucks because there's a lot of money I want to spend on all these pools, and I'm not
That's
winning.
for sure. I need to make it through in Super Contest so I can fund the next year of my fun.
That'd be perfect. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, hey Brandon, I've got to set up here to start our first picks of our top five power rankings. So, in true form, starting us out, I'm going to run our first play, and ultimately the Lions sitting on top. Any disagreements there?
No, no. I mean they gave everybody a scare on Thanksgiving, but the, I don't know how you could take anybody and go, I'm gonna power rank them over Detroit on a neutral field at this point.
What about these guys, though? Oh, these guys just had a hell of a game.
No, that's for sure. And look, for me, um, the only thing that holds the what's weird is that I feel like Buffalo is more cursed than Detroit is. I don't know what
They
that
could be.
is. Does that go the same? Like when I see Buffalo and I go, yeah, I mean they keep winning games, but like when it comes down to it, they're gonna miss a field goal. Like, and I just
Yeah.
go, Detroit, like Detroit might get beat by somebody, but I don't see it being in one of those soul crushing, go walk into traffic sort of losses that you just
Buffalo.
assume Buffalo is going to have. I don't know what's different about it, but maybe
Yeah.
it's the Dan Campbell of it all, where you just go like, this guy is built of just like grit and muscle, and they're not going to have that like heartbreaking sort of situation. But that's where my head's at, like as
I
far as the split between those two.
I absolutely understand that. I tell you one thing though that is truth to me is Josh Allen's playing a lot better and he's playing more within himself. He's more
Uh
confined.
huh.
He's not making the same mistakes we've seen him make in the past. Obviously, this is the regular season, and those mistakes are more glaring in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes
Yes.
when that time comes. But he's coming along and doing some good things. But can you believe, Brandon, that even after the Lions and the Bills are doing so well, we've actually got the Eagles sitting in the number two hole. They moved up. I mean, I think rightfully so.
That was a beating that
Oh
they handed out on Sunday.
yeah.
Like, you look at the numbers and you go, sure, yeah, this is how that worked out. But if if you sat there and watched the game, they just imposed their will for the entire second half. You
Yeah.
went like, yeah, they won by 5 points, but I never looked up and went like, oh, maybe Baltimore's going to cover here for me.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it the entire time, I just went like, oh, Philly's got it handled. Like they've got a game plan and their things working. And the thing that I thought Baltimore was going to do to Philly is exactly what Philly did to them. And so to me, I'm with you. I got to move them up there. I could see an argument for them being three and Buffalo being two, but if you put them on a neutral field, I think I got Philly.
Yeah. Probably right now for sure. They're a
Yeah.
difficult team to play, and they could be that team that takes out the Lions, and they've got a little bit of experience. And I hate to
Yeah.
say, it, but I mean they're deservedly so where they're sitting. Moving on, Kansas City still, in my opinion, trending down. But how do you take a team that's already clinched a playoff berth? They're 11-1, and say, no, you can't be in our top five,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you start talking about the rest of the teams that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something to the the history, and for you guys that listen to all three of the pods, we were kind of talking about this on the college side, where we went, hey, there's institutional knowledge that goes along with long-term winning.
Yep.
And these three teams that are above the Chiefs have won plenty of games. But as far as, hey, we get into the playoffs, and when it comes down to it, we figure out a way to win the game. I, you can make the numbers whatever you want, but the reality is if you put the Chiefs in there and they've worked out, hey, our running back is back, and we've shuffled the offensive line, and whatever cornerback that's kind of banged up is back, and we get everybody healthy and into the playoffs, you go, I, yeah, you might beat them,
Yeah.
but they probably got you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they got to be there in the 4 or 5 slot,
Yep.
and hopefully they have a good showing, and they can kind of get back towards what their record reflects, and we don't have to have these goofy conversations as much.
I would agree with that a lot. At five, we kind of have a 5A and a 5B this week. If you were a Tony La Russa fan back when he was a Cardinals, he used to say, he had a 1A and a 1B, or but they were tied for first kind of thing. Well, these guys are tied for fifth. Um,
Sure.
they're both new to our rankings. Um, I could argue that neither of them deserve to be in the top five. I could argue that both of them do. And so that's kind of why they sit where they sit.
It is an interesting thing because Pitt, like Green Bay, you go, I know where Green Bay's ceiling is, but I don't know if they're going to play up to it.
Right.
And Pittsburgh's kind of the opposite. You go, I know where Pittsburgh's floor is, but are they going to play above themselves?
Right.
And you kind of have these teams with these competing situations, um, where, if you just look at power rankings, Pittsburgh's probably 14, but they are continuing to figure out how to win games. And you look at the teams ahead of them: Washington, San Fran, Cincinnati, the Chargers, Miami, and you go, I don't trust any of those teams more than I trust Pittsburgh.
I don't know,
So,
man. I've seen some power rankings. Pittsburgh's moved up.
yeah, well, and I for sure, because of the way that they have been winning, if
Well, they're 9 and
you,
3.
yeah, yeah, like the way that they've been doing their winning is the only thing that battles against it. They keep winning, but there's these goofy things.
Oh, yeah.
And, last week finally broke me. We were talking probably on the live stream, definitely the week before, that, I thought that Pittsburgh was kind of crazy. They're just moon balls
Moonballs.
and picks and, that sort of shit. But when you go into Cincinnati and just go toe to toe with Burrow like that, I thought if Pittsburgh won, that it would be 17-14.
Yeah.
Not, hey, between the two of us, we scored 90 points.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
little odd.
it's crazy. So at this point, I have to go. I know where your floor is. Your floor is 9-8, right? Like, Tomlin ain't going to take a losing season. But other than that, they seem like they all of a sudden have this extra year to go into, and they've got quite a schedule coming up, and
Yeah.
if they can show well, they're either going to go back to where kind of the power rankings have them, or we're going to be staring at them going like, oh, these guys might win this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, right now they're sitting at the 3 seed in the playoffs with Kansas City and Buffalo clinched. That's
Yeah.
pretty stout company. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they are currently 99% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good percentage. Green Bay, on the other hand, is only a 98% chance to get into the playoffs. Um, and you got to be thinking, well, how's that possible? Well, they're 9 and 3 as well. But this team, in their last 8, is 7 and 1. Now their only loss is
Yeah,
to the Lions. I mean, these
yeah.
teams are playing good football. Probably both deserve to be tied for fifth.
Well, and the crazy thing is that if they win this week, they beat Detroit and they go to 10-3, and
Mm,
Detroit's 11-2,
you're one game
then
from
we're
it.
staring into this situation where they split the yearly matchup, and now Detroit has to do Buffalo, at Chicago, at San Francisco, Minnesota, and Green Bay um, gets to do. They got to go to Seattle, but then they get New Orleans. They get Chicago the last week. They got to play in Minnesota. So like, there's some hard games out there for both teams where Detroit does not have the division locked up at this point.
No.
Like they definitely have an opportunity to screw this up and end up being a wild card team
Yeah.
after being kind of the number one team for quite a few weeks here.
I think it's going to be important to see how Dan Campbell handles that as a coach and how he
Hmm.
has his team ready to play week in and week out. I think that no matter what, the in division is going to be a problem. I think our best test to see is going to be at Buffalo because I feel Dan Campbell will have his guys feeling like they're playing in the Super Bowl, where Allen and McDermott will be going, it's just a game. If we see him in the Super Bowl, we'll worry about it then. I feel like
Sure.
Buffalo's maybe been down this road enough and had their lumps from Kansas City that they'll handle that situation better.
They they should. They should. But I mean, going back to what I said, like it's a good point. I had not looked that far out on their schedule, and when we're talking about next week, the two of them get to go head to head in Detroit.
How fun
That
is that?
that's the kind of game. That's the kind of game where Tyler Bass misses two field goals and an extra point, and you go, "Oh, they did it again!
Yeah,
Damn it, they did it again!"
yeah,
And you're just like, ah, crap! Like we're gonna have this happen again.
yeah, yeah. Oh well, so that's our five, and that's craziness. Now our dreamers, the Ravens, arguably still a top power team, but their record doesn't hold it. And I at this point, we're not going to go there. They're a fringe team. Same with the Vikings and the Broncos and the Chargers. Now every team that we've got on the page here, Brandon, is almost locked up for a playoff berth. The Broncos
Yeah,
have the lowest at this point with a 72% chance to make the playoffs. We could put the Commanders in this list. I just don't think they're as powerful as these others. And the only reason that the Broncos and the Chargers are on it is because they're continuing to improve week after week. I feel like the Commanders have stalled a little bit.
well, and they have a defense. They both have defenses that travel.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So like the Commanders clearly can go out there and just ring up some points on people.
Yes.
But we haven't exactly figured out why sometimes Dallas comes to town and screws their offense all up, and then they go and they play Tennessee and just hang 40 on them. And
Yeah.
just every time I look up, there's a guy in a Commander's jersey running with the ball, you know? And so until that gets a little less wavy, that makes me question that a little bit more, even though they probably are, rated a little higher than Denver.
Yeah.
Um,
At this point, the
but
Commanders, it'd be good for them to lose a little bit and get a better draft pick because this is not their year. But man, if they could pick up a couple of top defensive players coming out of college with some nice picks in the first and second round next year, those are some things, some nice D linemen, edge rushers, some guys like that. Maybe sign a free agent or two at corner. The
yeah,
Commanders could be dangerous for a long time. This is not their year.
it's not. But there's a good chance that they win three of the last four
Yeah,
and go in with the division
yeah,
and get themselves, a home playoff game and get all those fans ramped up, and you know,
That's good. They'll sell a
um,
lot of jerseys if
like
they ever get a defense.
outside of choking some of these games away, you at New Orleans, Atlanta, at Dallas, um, and then they just got to play Philly, which should be an interesting game, right? Because if Philly really is who we think they are, um, they go and say, Philly has the easiest schedule for the rest of the year. They got Carolina, Pitt, at Washington, Dallas, and the Giants. So they really only have that one game 2 weeks from now, week 16, yeah, 2 weeks from now, that, they've got to get up for
Yeah,
and really, defend their turf. So that'll be a fun one here in a couple of weeks.
yeah, absolutely. Um, moving on to this next slide, that really tells the story. We were already kind of talking about this. We talked about Green Bay and Detroit a little bit. Um, the Commanders on the page. Where are they going to move with the Eagles? The Chargers and the Chiefs. Once again, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Um, these teams are all within the division. They're all beating up on each other. We talked about it a little bit earlier. These games with the hook, man, there's so many of these games that are at the 6.5, 3.5, 4.5, 3.5, and these interdivision games. I personally feel like this week is a heavy, heavy gambler week in terms of your bets, as opposed to a lean on the favorite week, because these interdivision matchups are always close.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. I'm torn on a bunch of them. I'm sure I'll make the wrong decision. Um, the important part is I just need to find five. I've come down to, um, you know, being fairly okay with how Gap's going if I can catch up and make a run on this super contest. So I just got to figure out five of them. But yeah, staring at all these three and a halves, um, that half point ends up being worth its weight in gold. And I think you're right. It weird bounces in some of these games, but kind of starts tomorrow night, right? Just staring down the barrel of 3.5 with Green Bay.
Uh huh.
And I thought that was going to get shorter, and it hasn't yet. So I'm interested to see throughout the day tomorrow. Um, it should get pushed one way or the other, and we should get to know kind of where the universe is feeling this tipping. Like we should see some threes out there. We should see some fours out there, um, and kind of give its hand away on which way the wisdom of the crowd thinks this is going to go.
Yeah, and I just don't know. I really feel like a lot of these division games that we're going to see, Vegas holds those numbers so tight. At whatever they plan it on, you just don't see the movement that much because they're getting enough money bet on both sides that they
Uh huh.
don't have to move it as much. I do think we'll see a little bit, right? And obviously, for you out there that are paying attention, look and see where the money's landing. Look and see if, it's always interesting to see low number of bets, high dollars spent. Right? That's an indicator that some sharp guys are putting a lot of money on a team. And high number of bets, high money means that the public and the sharps are on the same teams. And then a lot of times high number of bets and low money is where it's just the average Joe guys. So just understand what you're looking at when you look at these numbers and how that plays out. Brandon and I talk a little bit about seeing the line moves. The lines only move when the money is bet one way or the other, and that's a very important thing to note because remember, Vegas is just trying to break even. They win no matter what because of the juice. They just can't take too much liability on one side or the other. So, when you see a big play come in, that's an interesting tell for you based on what could actually happen in the game because those guys seem to have the most juice behind them, for lack of a better word.
Well, and you can definitely that's another, micro piece that you can kind of watch as you go throughout the day is where are they moving the juice? And, like it seems like the best line out there right now on the Green Bay side is the 3.5 minus 115.
Yeah.
Detroit, you can get a -3 for 118. So you have a little bit of
Yeah.
disagreement among the books right now, but consensus line has kind of slowly been moving down uh juice wise. Throughout
Yeah.
the last couple of days, we were up in 114 and 110, and now we've kind of been hanging out around that 105 from a
Hmm.
consensus standpoint, just shortening and shortening and shortening up that -3.5 from Detroit.
Yeah. And that's really where it's gonna boil down to in some of these games and some of these plays as you're trying to make your decisions. And it's kind of important to understand that as you're especially in these pools, like we like to run in these pools, right? Understanding where the edge is, and every little bit of edge can sometimes help you. Now, let's be realistic. A lot of times these things have these movements and these micro movements, and then Detroit will win by 40. But there's sometimes
Sure.
you can't help, if Love throws two pick sixes and the running back fumbles twice and they're scooping scores and they happen to be on the 3 yard line and all of a sudden it's 28-0 with 7 minutes to go before halftime. Those are things that are variables that just aren't accounted for. You take those four variables out. How did they play the rest of the game? It's probably within 3.5. So that's the
Right.
thing that you've got to realize is that this is the story that's being told based on facts and data, but there is the variables that make it gambling, and that's what makes it fun. That's why we do this.
Without a doubt. Yeah, like when you're trying to just get to 56%,
Oh,
um, all of those little, hey, I won by half a point, is the difference between being up or being down in these pools. So hopefully we will get some substantial line movement as we go through the afternoon tomorrow, and everybody can make an educated guess at how this is going to work out on a weird Thursday night.
so that's Brandon. He's hopeful. I'm Nate. I'm a
Yeah.
little more realistic in this one. Good luck on your picks, and let's see what happens in that Lions game. It's going to be fun.
Cheers.